This is the attack on Pearl Harbor. Now notice the gun turret in the middle here. What I liked about this viewer session is they drew that turret there right in the middle where it should be, just at the right angle. They didn't get much else, but they got these sharp contrasting lines like the turret of the gun on the battleship and that kind of lift, that crane in the back. And you can see it's reflected there in the pictures, those kind of straight lines. Now, this is what's called in viewing entropy. It seems to be easier to pick out objects for a viewer that are in contrast to all the other objects around. A spire, something that really sticks out. And this is an example of that. It's called entropy. Not quite the way physicists use it, but just in the general sense of disorderliness can create a target that is easier to view than a very smooth scene. And in his post-session summary, he didn't get anything like what we might have gotten about the horror of war or the danger. He had a sense of fun, explosions and a lot of metal and a lot of stuff going on. It's a lot of fun. And now we found this at Farsight a long time ago, that in some of the natural disasters that we viewed from time to time, you might not always get a feeling of sadness. You might just have a sense of activity and adventure. Perhaps that's how our soul or other aspects of our mind view the same situation. We may have different levels of reaction to one situation. It may not be uniform. Now, there's a picture here of a man on a camel, it seems, in the background here, and a cross. This viewer was able to describe, she first draws these two beans and this object here, this spokey-like object. She mentioned that there were two beans and that there was a sense of something like a temple, wheel-like spokes. She describes one higher, one lower, and a sense of awesome to behold, humbling before heaven, the kind of the sacredness of it. And then in her drawing, look, she draws a person apparently sitting on an animal and a spokey-like thing, which to me seemed like the cross. It wasn't literally a spokey-like thing, but I'll take it. It's pretty close. So it's the two people are there, the object, the cross-like object, the sense of expansiveness. It all came through in that viewing session. And she described a being one higher, one lower together in a beautiful, colorful environment. Now here's another session where the viewer was able to read the words off the page. This apparently is some sort of frequent flyer mile ad. But she described in her session, at first, something we can't see there. It was a person running. I couldn't quite verify that. But then she later went on to describe a plentiful bounty, a harvest, like a cornucopia, continuous, seasonal, like the production of food, man-made, yellowish colors. Or it could be a long way distance-wise, as someone would go miles for it, perhaps to be fed. Now, I don't know what's going on there, but she picked up the meaning of that advertisement. I mean, this whole point of frequent flyer miles, how many miles did you go? And she describes the story of a person running, and then they're running a long way to be fed. And she read the word off the page. Now, I haven't seen that very often, but of course, if we go to the history of the SRI program at Stanford, people were occasionally able to do this, especially viewers like Pat Price, who apparently never missed. Whatever they said you could take to the bank. There are not many viewers like that. Even the viewers that we know about miss many of their targets often. We certainly miss them a lot of the time. It's part of the viewing experience. But in this case, she was able to literally read the words off the page, and it's exciting when that happens. And here's another session that she did. These are the Easter Island stoneheads. She draws a picture of a man pounding, or someone pounding on something, and gets a sense of something collapsing, falling down, being shaped with a hammer. Solid material. And then she says, a very heavy object that's black-gray in color. It's fixed on the ground. It appears immovable. It has a flat top. I see a live organic pounding on the object to shape it. He's using a tool like a hammer. The object is hard, so it's like being sculpted, like a blacksmith. It's dirty and grimy work, but he's making something monumental and lasting. The object could be falling down or in danger of falling over. Now, in my mind, she's viewing the same target at two different points in time. She's viewing it when it was constructed, and later when it's falling over, she's describing objects that are big and black and in danger of falling over, and they're falling over. It raises a lot of questions about what we're doing when we're viewing. Does time really exist like we've been taught? Or is everything happening at once, and it's just simply different frames of reality? That the ticking of our clocks is just a mechanical illusion that we're trying to ascribe to our consciousness, putting all these frames together in a linear sequence. This type of result suggests to me that people can be at the target 500 years ago and in the present. And in case you're wondering, we tend to think that the viewer is not viewing the picture. They're at the target location. Just like radionics, where you put a picture in a little container, and in theory that should send energy to that person or as it's been done to forests or whatever, that picture, the energy goes to that object in reality. In viewing, it seems to suggest that the target is like a radionic cue. It's just showing the viewer, well, where should I go in space-time? They're actually at the location, and that's why we can move them around in time and space with movement exercises into the past, into the future, back 20 feet, forward 20 feet, move forward half an hour, whatever. It's all there. And whether it's an actual holographic replication of the target that the viewer is at, or if it actually is the place, and maybe if they were viewing us right here, we would see them. I don't know the answer to that question. It raises a lot of great questions, and I don't think we know all the answers yet. But in theory, we believe the viewer is going to the target location, and that can be verified with different types of experiments where you put things at the target location that are not at the target picture, and you see if they pick it up or not. Or you could tell the viewer to go to that location at a different time than is in the picture and see if they're able to do that. So we're still learning a lot about this whole process of viewing. There's a lot we don't know, and that's partly why it's so much fun. It's really like being at the edge of something that's really, really different. Well, here's a picture of Mars. And if you saw Tom Van Flanders' presentation the other night, we know there's a lot going on there that we haven't been told about. But here is our picture. Now look at this. Here's the canyon going across. And look at that. There's this gash. I mean, it's something planet-like. This is all the viewer got, but I mean, it's good enough for me. This could have been anything, and they got something like a planet-like with a big gash going across. In theory, if they're at the location, we could send them to one of these locations that Tom has, on the NASA site, these very high-resolution pictures, and walk around there and see are they really plants, or what are they? Maybe we'll do that. Here's a picture of a pool player. This viewer did the session at the husband's construction site. She just had a piece of sheetrock and a pencil. Here's the session. The target was in a folder on her desk. It was one of the take-home targets that we give people to take home. And it was one in the folder. She hadn't opened it, thick manila folder. She just said, I'll do a viewing session. I've got half an hour. She sat down on the steps there, took a piece of sheetrock, and you can see there's the cue stick and the pool player, and the cue balls are in the lower right-hand corner. So it's just perfect. It's amazing. Distance does not seem to affect the accuracy of the viewing. In fact, some people like William Tiller, Dr. William Tiller, emeritus of Stanford University, have suggested that viewing gets more accurate the more distant the target is from the viewer. We're dealing with a different type of space. He calls it our space, in contrast to this direct space of our senses. There's a reciprocal space of the quantum world. He's suggesting that the viewing becomes more accurate the farther away the target is from you. In other words, if the target is right in front of you, it's harder than if it's farther away. I don't know if we have enough data to know if that's true, but the implications are kind of interesting. There were some experiments done with Ingo Swann where they sent him down in a submarine in the bay in LA, or I believe it was somewhere off the coast of California. They found that he could still do the viewing with the same level of accuracy, and it suggests that, it's not an electromagnetic signal, which would be filtered out by Faraday cages and things like that, where the experiments have been done to see, can we filter out the signal? No, you can't filter out the signal. And when Ingo viewed, I believe it was Uranus, he found these rings there that the Voyager craft had not detected in 1976. And when the craft got there a couple months later, there were the rings that he got in his viewing session. This seems to suggest that viewing works at any distance. It's not limited by distance or time in the way that conventional electromagnetic signals are. Here's another double-blind session. It's an advertisement for a laptop computer. Now focus in on the picture of the person there. It's a juggler, and here's the picture. Do we have the picture up there on the screen? Yeah, see that? It's pretty good. Pretty close description of the artwork. Now the viewer never saw the computer and was disappointed with the session, and this is what we call doorknobbing, when the viewer sees the doorknob and not the door. This viewer was disappointed with the session, but I thought it was fantastic because the angle of the knees, of the bending knees, and the shape of this person there is exactly like the picture. It's a double-blind session. And she described someone juggling and twirling acrobatic motions. In a sense, it's a story. It raises questions about what we're doing when we view, but she's describing a story. It's just a piece of artwork, but it's an accurate description of the story. And here it is moving around, twirling, and all the colors are correct and so forth.